Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to acknowledge a few folks in the room. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge a group that actually left the room, but I still want to acknowledge them anyway. I'd like to thank the U.S. Army Brass Quintet under the direction of Master Sergeant John Voth. I want to make sure, we will make sure that they know that they were appreciated. So how about a round of applause in absentia? I'd like to recognize some of our special guests here who have joined us for lunch, beginning with those seated at the head table. First, the Honorable Mark Esper, Secretary of the Army. Mr. Mark Averill, Acting Administrative Assistant to the Secretary of the Army. Mr. David Zolette, who is the LMI President and Chief Executive Officer. Of course, you know LMI is a management consulting firm with a long history, a 55-year history of serving the federal government and our Army. LMI is recognized as a top employer for military veterans for the 9th consecutive year and is a longtime supporter of AUSA's annual meeting and is a member of the Army Civilian Workforce Transformation Team that actually supported this morning's Civilian Forum. So I'd like to thank David and LMI because they sponsored today's luncheon. David. Also at the table is Lieutenant General Guy Swan, AUSA Vice President for Education. And Command Sergeant Major Retired Jesse Sablon, our Joseph P. Cribbins Award winner from the Indiana chapter, and he's joined by his wife, Hee Jong, and son Thomas at the table, but they also have their daughter Michelle and son-in-law Richard seated elsewhere. So let's welcome them. Also at the table, Command Sergeant Major Retired Doug Gibbons, AUSA's 2nd Region President and Indiana Chapter President. And Mr. Bill Staley, the Deputy at Financial Management, Army Financial Management Command. There are a number of general officers in the audience. I know General Becker is here, and there are others. If you're a general officer of any rank, active or retired, would you please stand so we can recognize you? There are also quite a few members of our senior executive service, the Army's civilian senior-most leaders. So if you're a member of the SES, whether you're Tier 1, 2, or 3, please stand so we can recognize you, active or retired. And if you're a member of the most distinguished leadership group in the Army, if you're a Sergeant Major retired, or Command Sergeant Major retired, please stand up, please. We're also happy to have a guest speaker from this morning's session who happens to be the Acting Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, Mr. Marshall Williams. And we've got a lot of AUSA dignitaries. If you're a chapter president or a region president, please stand so we can thank you as well. And another special group with us today is AUSA's Army Civilian Advisory Committee. Will the members of that committee please stand? Ms. Diane Randon, Mr. Jay Aronowitz, Mr. James Dalton, Mr. John Hall, Ms. Ellen Helmerson, and Mr. Greg Stevens. Please stand so we can thank you. And if you're a panel member from this morning's great seminar, I actually heard from a couple people saying this was the best one yet. Thanks to the panel members. If you would stand, General Becker, Randy Robinson, Diane Randon, Greg Stevens, Ms. Payne. And lastly, if you are a civilian, were a civilian, value an Army civilian, or love an Army civilian, will you please stand? So I'd like now to ask a good former colleague and friend of mine, Ms. Diane Randon, who's currently performing the duties of the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army Manpower and Reserve Affairs, to talk about something I'm really excited about, and I know you will be too, the new Army Civilian Service pin.
Thanks, John. I unapologetically will repeat some of the things I said in the forum today, and you get to hear it again, and I think it's great reinforcement. And again, it's a great day to be an Army civilian. Hua, that's right. I get to be the spokesperson to share some very exciting news with you. I'm delighted to announce that today we are unveiling 3 new pins to recognize Army civilian service. These pins were designated specifically to acknowledge significant milestones in an employee's service. This recognition creates an opportunity to display and acknowledge the dedicated service of our Department of the Army civilian workforce and its significance to furthering the Army mission and being an integral part of the total Army team. We enlisted the efforts of our Army's Institute of Heraldry for the design of our pins. The Institute of Heraldry is the only organization within the government, and it's in our Army, devoted to the science and art of official symbolism, providing products and services in support of the executive branch, Department of Defense, and all federal agencies. A very special thank you to Director Mr. Mugno and his dedicated team on designing this beautiful pin. Chuck couldn't be here today at the luncheon, but he was at the forum, and we did get to recognize him. The Department of the Army plaque, and the bronze pin is up on display for you to see now, identifies service affiliation, while the triangle is a distinctive symbol of civilian service. The rays emanating from the plaque symbolize the far-reaching impact of civilian contributions to the Army mission. The bronze pin is for the Department of Army civilian service recognition and reflects service with the Army after 1 year. Next chart, please. The silver pin is the Department of Army time-honored civilian service recognition and will be bestowed on an Army civilian with 10 or more years of accumulated Army service. Next chart, please. Finally, the Army Civilian Retired Recognition is a gold pin that will be bestowed on any Army civilian upon retirement from the Army. The use of gold medal reflects the highest level of career distinction at the time of retirement. The gold rays illuminating from the triangle allude to the future years ahead. We hope Army civilians will wear these pins with pride, knowing they are a part of a community of people who have chosen to use their talent, skills, and energy in the service of our Army and our nation. Secretary Esper signed an Army directive on the 4th of October implementing the use of these pins for recognition. A special thank you to our team, Constance Ray and the legal team, for this accomplishment. We are very honored today to have Secretary Esper here to pin our first recipients. It's a great Army Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Secretary Esper, if you would come up to the stage here so we can begin recognizing our pin recipients. And with the following...
Diane, come on back up.
Oh.
Okay, we are going to award these pins here momentarily. It really is a distinct honor for me to do this. It recognizes all the critical service that our Army civilians provide. You are the continuity for the force, the continuity that bridges the gaps when we have rotations. So, but first things first, I am in a few moments here going to present the pins to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th recipients of this pin. But first things first, this came to me several weeks ago, and it was a wonderful idea. It wasn't hard to decide this one because it was such a very good idea. But it was brought to me by one person, Diane, who's somewhere behind me right now. Stand right here. So yeah, she's being shy and showing a good deal of humility, but particularly when she calls herself the spokesperson. But Diane led this. She took the initiative. She pulled all the right folks together. She prepared the paperwork. She checked with the Center for Military Heraldry and brought it all together. And so it's only fitting for somebody who's been in the civilian service now since 1989, who has served in both the United States and abroad. She's been a comptroller, a resource manager, a budget analyst, and a program manager, and somebody who was inducted into the senior executive service in 2007. It's only fitting that as the originator of this award, that she receives the very first pin. Sound good? That's leadership. That's taking the initiative. That's taking care of your people, and that's really what I'm really proud to see when I see our DA civilians come forward and do that. I see Marshall Williams congratulating her. Very nice. You should be back at your office working. Okay, so you need to get back over there right now. Your team have been working pretty hard. They're doing a fantastic job, though, really changing the Army in many ways. So, but Diane, thank you very much. It really means a lot. I know to everybody here. But it means a lot to me and the leadership team and the chief and the under and others who really see it as an important way to recognize our DA civilians who've served the Army for many years, many decades in some cases, to have you put forward a great idea like that and for us to be able to implement it so quickly. And it only took a few weeks. It didn't take like 6 years or something like that. So, look, this is supposed to be a town hall, so I don't want to chew up a lot of time speaking up here. I assume many of you heard me on Monday morning, and I'll just say this much. We are in a renaissance. I believe it. I believe it in my bones. My intent is to be here to make a difference, and I know you all want to as well. It's all about readiness and modernization. It's about what's doing best for our soldiers, our civilians, and their families, all of your families as well. And so this renaissance means we look at everything differently. We turn it upside down, inside out. We look for efficiencies. We look for greater ways to be effective. We look for reform in every nook and cranny and every seat cushion to make sure we free up the time, money, and manpower to focus on readiness and modernization. We have a great period of time right now, an extraordinary period of time. Think about it. It's not because of me or the chief or whatever. It's because I think we have a team that does work together, from the military side to the civilian side. We're also blessed with a great 17 and 18 and 19 budget and authorities. I mean, think about it. It's the first time in 10 plus years that we've had a budget before the beginning of the fiscal year. So it's, yeah. The Secretary of Defense talks about this a lot, and it's worth repeating. We need to use this time well. We need to use this money well. If we don't, we will squander our credibility on Capitol Hill and with Congress. It's just that important. That's why I like to move out with a lot of great speed and push hard, because if we can capture this moment, if we can find those early successes, if we can put points on the board, we can sustain it through 20, 21, 22, and keep moving forward. So that's why this is such an important time for me, for the leadership team. And why does that matter to you all? It's because of this. Just a few weeks ago, I was talking to somebody on the Hill, and they were saying how impressed the chairman was with how we're moving out and all the good things happening in the Army. And this person asked a very important question, and they said, well, how are you going to sustain that once the military moves on, there's a change of administration? How are you going to sustain that? And I was able to talk about, we'll change programs and we'll try and change culture, etc. But I came down to one very important point, one singular point, which is specific to all you. You are the continuity. Our DA civilians will carry the ball forward to make sure that all these changes we're making, all the reforms, all the freeing up of money, all the relieving of mandatory requirements, which should be coming off of your backs as well, sustain forward from administration to administration, from changeover in military to changeover in military. So that's my hope, that's my aspiration. I think that's why we're working so hard. That's why I continue to beat on Will Williams and Bruce Jetty and Jordan Gillis and everybody on the Secretariat side to make sure we move out quickly. There's too much at stake with our Army as an institution, but also with our soldiers and their families and you and your families. So once again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you do, and please give yourselves a round of applause. Okay, with that, I will open the floor to questions. If you have any tough ones, I will dodge them, and we'll just go from there, okay? And this is a follow-up from the town hall we had a few months ago. Yeah, please. If you can't tell me your name and where you're from, and do we have a microphone? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I made a mistake here. I got so excited I forgot about doing the pins. You hold your question, and we're going to recognize recipients 2, 3, and 4. That's why I have an aide, right? Where is he? Good job, Kevin. You can have Saturday off. Maybe. Okay, I'm sorry. Pins.
First of all, I got to just make a remark. I mentioned at the beginning, this is the 25th Department of the Army Civilian Luncheon that's sponsored by AUSA. I've been to many of them, not all 25. This is the first one that the Secretary of the Army has come to. Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I've already screwed it up too. So.
No. So with the following, the second, third, and fourth pin recipients move towards the stage. That's Ms. Tanisha Gray, Mr. John Ursel, and Ms. Zelly King. Ms. Gray. Our first recipient of the Department of the Army Civilian Service recognition greater than 1 year goes to Mr. Tanisha Gray, Ms. Tanisha Gray, a family advocacy program victim advocate in the Army Community Service Division within the Directorate of Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, Installation Management Command at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Ms. Gray has been in this position since September 2017. Ms. Gray's contributions in direct support of soldiers and their families are recognized with the Department of the Army Civilian Service Recognition Pin for more than 1 year of exceptional service. Our first recipient of the Department of the Army Time-Honored Civilian Service Recognition Pin, 10 years or more of service, goes to Mr. John Ursel. Mr. Ursel began his Army career in September of 2008 as a management analyst intern with Installation Management Command. He currently serves as a senior management analyst in the Manpower Allocation Division within the Plans and Resources Directorate of the Army G1 at the Pentagon. In this position, he analyzes manpower data for impacts on policies governing manpower utilization, manpower staffing, and requirements determination. Mr. Ursel contributes tremendously to the Army mission and is recognized with the Army Time-Honored Civilian Service Recognition Pin for more than 10 years of exceptional service.
Cool. Congratulations. Great, thanks, John. Great job.
Our first recipient of the Department of the Army Civilian Retiree Recognition is Ms. Zelly King, a realty specialist with the Operations Directorate, Office of the Assistant Chief of Staff for Installation Management, the OAXM, in the Pentagon. Ms. King began her career with the Army 30 years ago in 1987 as a housing assistant in Hanau, Germany. Over the course of her 30-year career, she succeeded in a variety of positions in installation management, resource management, and program management. Ms. King held various positions at Army headquarters and at installations in both the U.S. and overseas. In her last assignment as a realty specialist, she was responsible for reviewing and recommendations on real property management actions such as leases, use permits, easements, disposal action of land and buildings, and space management. Ms. King retires after 30 years of federal service, all of that time with the Department of the Army. Her retirement date is this Saturday, October 13th. Ms. King is recognized with the Army Civilian Retiree Pin for her selfless and dedicated service to soldiers, civilians, and their families.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. No, don't go too far.
Good picture.
Group shot. Squeeze in. All right. Great job.
How about one more round of applause? So the Secretary was kind. He gave you a little time to think about those questions. So, Mr. Secretary?
Okay, first question. Now that we got that right.
Shall I? Okay. I was about to say I forgot the question, but
Okay, who's next?
well, thank you so much for being here. I'm Rania Azmi, leading the Kuwait chapter of the Association of the United States Army, and have been with the AUSA for the last 11 years. I'm from Egypt, and I'm very proud to be of support to the service members. My question really is, according to your vision and believing in the Renaissance, what can be done through the Association of the United States Army in the overseas chapter? We have been striving to do morale-boosting events for the service members, but we are willing to take the guidance and do more if we can.
That's a good question. I don't know, Guy, do you want to help out on that? Can I throw a lifeline?
I think for the overseas chapters in the room, I think the most important thing is to get linked with the local commands in your particular area. People have a misconception sometimes about what AUSA is or is not, but when you can put a face to the name of AUSA, get to know the commanders, get to know the staff judge advocate and the attorneys that work for that commander, I think that's the best way for our chapter leaders to support, especially in an overseas environment.
Good, thanks, Guy. Thanks for that question. Who's up next? Okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Secretary, Rodney Kenny from Huntsville, Alabama, with the Informatics Applications Group. Two strings that strike me standing in this room is the importance of the fact that we have a budget for the next several years, the issues associated
for 1 year.
Thank you. The issues that we are dealing with associated with cyber, and the fact that DA civilians are oftentimes the most continuous people force that we have in our nation. In fact, having been a former service member, I know I always was responsible for this, that, and the other thing, but I had to change.
Right.
We have the civilians here. They show the resilience. How are we going to, if you will, get ahead of this challenge associated with cyber and leverage this DA civilian continuous support that we have?
Yeah, you mean cyber in terms of cyber operations or cyber in terms of protection of our IT systems?
Both.
I should have just chosen the one I wanted to answer. So, on the first, on terms of cyber operations, I don't know. I mean, clearly we're going to do a lot. We are doing a lot on the uniform front to put cyber capabilities, teams specifically, at the brigade, division, and corps level. And that's going to be a warfighting capability. But that's a warfighting capability at the tactical and operational level. We will also be building capabilities at the strategic level. And I think that's where our cyber and cybercom come in. And clearly that's where we have a large abundance of civilian experts who are engaged in cyber. And I guess if General Nakasone was here, he'd probably give you a better answer. But my sense is that's where we're going to really need that civilian capability. And we're going to need to have hiring practices, which can bring in folks at a lot younger, earlier point in their career, at probably a much higher level. Because I will tell you from my experience in the private sector when it comes to IT, those kids are really quite capable, and they could choose their path. I mean, companies, they can go from company to company because the demand is so high. There's just not that supply has not yet built up within the U.S. ecosystem to meet the demand. And so we have to be able to accommodate that on both the military side, and we're trying to do that, and on the civilian side. And if it's not there, it's something that I need to look into. So I would see it certainly at the strategic end of things, and certainly within protection of our cyber systems there in the building at the Pentagon. I mean, cybersecurity is absolutely critical. It's no surprise to anyone that we're being hacked daily and stuff is being stolen from us daily. So the more we can do better on that, that's where we can leverage our civilians. A lot of expertise coming out of the private sector, more so probably on that end than in the military sector. So, thank you. Okay, who's up next? Are we done? Okay, Mike Flanagan, who I went to school with. If he says anything, he's a complete liar.
Hey, Mr. Secretary, we had a kind of a tough question this morning related to Futures Command on the panel. And I think there's some uneasiness out there. Everyone hears your vision loud and clear on the need for Futures Command. But I think some folks feel like, is this going to take cuts to the civilian workforce? What does this mean to me as a DA civilian? How do you respond to that concern, I guess, that some folks might have?
Sure, I'll probably answer from a multiple of angles. So, first of all, coming into this role, I was convinced that we could not modernize and build the Army we need to build with the acquisition system, the big A acquisition, by the way. So be clear, we all know what big A means, right? Versus small a. We can't get there with the big A acquisition system we have. Not because there's not good people and people with expertise and people who want to do well and people who are passionate about the Army. It's just that it was disparate. It was all over the place. I mean, you have RD-ECOM down here in Huntsville. You had, testing up here. You had contracting over here. And there was no one single person in charge and no one clear organizational structure and no one giving clear guidance. And so the fundamental purpose of Futures Command really, and it's in response to the Hill and to people who've testified on the Hill, was to bring unity of command, unity of effort. And so if you look at what we've done so far, and we can talk more about this if you want in further Q&A, we haven't moved anybody. We've drawn the boxes. We've tightened up the lines so there's now solid lines, for the most part, going into Futures Command under General Mike Murray. And so that addresses unity of command, unity of effort. The second part of this, and one of the big shortcomings of the past 20, 30 years has been the requirements process. So who here is an ASALT, by the way? Just a few of you? Okay. So I think ASALT's been unfairly beaten up over the years. Okay? You can clap, Mike. Why is that? Because what happens is ASALT becomes at the end of the process, the acquisition process, and you end up trying to deliver something, and by the time it gets to you, you get this buildup of requirements and all this other stuff, and it's hard to deliver in a program like FCS, which is the poster child for bad programs. It's over budget, it's over cost, over schedule, underperforming, and ASALT bears the cross. And the fact is, the problems begin in the requirements process, where you have people out there saying, I need a tank that can swim underwater, that can shoot around 10,000 miles, that can carry a crew of one, that can see at night, and they're just ridiculous requirements. They're never achievable, despite what the technologists would say, or PM would, ASALT would say, et cetera. And so what we've done with AFC is now, through the construction of the CFTs across functional teams, is, again, put Mike Murray in charge of requirements. We bring all the people into the room at once, right? So you're all in that huddle. There's contractor, and there's ASALT, and there's a budget person, and there's a tester, and there's a warfighter, and all these people are at the table. So it's no longer, as somebody said to me, it's no longer a relay race where 12 different people are handing off the baton from 400 meters to another 400 meters, and nobody knows where the race began, and nobody knows who slowed down when and who sped up. It's more like a football team. You go in the huddle, you talk about what you're going to build, you all agree, 1, 2, 3, break, and you go out and you run your play, right? And it's much more of a team approach. So we get the requirements right up front, and we don't allow different people in the different parts of the process change the requirements. So in that regard, I think it gives us a lot better clarity. All that is a long way of saying, I guess, more to another part of your question, Mike, is this. The intent is not to riff people or to take away responsibilities or authorities, but really to breed collaboration, to bring folks together up front, the ASALT folks, again, the testers, the people who do contracting, to discuss the problem, make sure we have a clear understanding, a common picture of what we want to do, and then move forward and let people do their jobs. Let the PMs make some reasonable trade-offs at their margin, right? Not changing requirements, but you got to be able to make the trade-offs. Let the contractors, when they write the contract, know where we're trying to go, what we're trying to do. And do all those things up front. And really empower people to do it well. And do it in far fewer time than the 10, 15, 17 years it takes now, and get it down to 5 to 7. I think we can do that. I have enough confidence in all of you that are involved in that process, that if we just get you a line, get you on the same sheet of paper, and let you do your job, we can get there. But, every circus needs somebody in charge, and Mike Murray, head of Futures Command, will be in charge. And the PMs and all that, PEOs, will still report to Bruce Jetty, and acquisition will still be a key player in there at the end of the day. But that's how we're trying to arrange it, is just get people lined up and get them talking and working together. And not get rid of the stovepipes, really. Does that sort of kind of answer it? Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll go to you, but somebody else had their hand up over here, I think. Okay, yeah, he's got the microphone, then we'll come back over there to you.
Hey, sir, my name's Mark, and I'm from the John Cabbiani chapter in Sacramento. I was just going to ask you about usajobs.gov, and I know you're not the head of OPM,
Thank goodness.
But you probably have a lot of input, I would think.
Nope.
Nope, zero? None at all.
But go ahead and ask your question.
Well, I was thinking, it's a beautiful platform. I'm sure that, that whether I was a newspaper boy or whatever, years ago, I mean, that matters because you have to put all the stuff in there. Was there any thought to maybe making it, instead of driving it with the resume, the rear view mirror? You ever tried driving a car with a rear view mirror? It's kind of tough. So maybe we could get maybe a more predictive or analytical component to it, and maybe some testing in it. Is there any thought in your HR channels that, feeding forward into that, that maybe we could, especially to get the younger people in, to see what their aptitudes are, what their abilities are, instead of looking at their resume, because they may not have a lot of years in the trench, but they might be really smart. So is there any thought to that? Analytical component?
No, well, yes. So you're being kind. I'm not a fan of the OPM website. I think it's a major contributor to our civilian hiring problems. I think any type of system where you have to go on the website and you have to assert that you're an expert in everything forces people to be dishonest. And I don't believe that. I certainly cannot assert that I'm an expert in anything, let alone everything. And so when you have to do that, and when the tricks of the trade are go out there and read the job description and then mimic it back in terms of describe, it's a fundamentally flawed system. And I've talked privately to members of Congress, and I've testified that I believe that we should move that to DOD and let DOD handle it. And then I can have input on it. And then I can work with the Secretary of Defense or the DepSecDef to build a system that gets rid of all those artificialities and all the gaming inherent in it, and maybe does do a more of a forward-looking approach. So I'm not satisfied with a civilian hiring system that on average takes 140 days. And worse yet, the goal is to hire somebody in 80 days. That's not how the private sector works. If you were to say, I'm going to hire you in 80 days, people would walk, right? We should be 30 days or under, 30 to 45 days. That's the goal I gave for my folks. I think 30 to 45 days. I don't know if we can get there, but we're going to push hard. There's a lot we can do, and every week I peel off another layer of this system. I finally learned, it took me a while, but I finally learned about the background checks, which, by the way, we could do it on one page, and it takes about less than a week if we were to do the background checks the way the law intended. And so where's Marshall Williams? Is he here? Good. That's where he should be. That's where he should be right now, peeling this one back. But there's a lot we can peel back from that. So that's my view on OPM. I mean, look, they're not bad people, but they're trying to construct a system that is fair as possible to everybody and is trying to be objective. And a lot of people want to work for the federal government because they're patriotic Americans. And that's good. That's all well and good. But it's not working. It's not working for folks. It's not working for me. I don't think it's working for CPAC and CHARA and MNRA or for the commands and everything. So that's kind of my view. So I'd like to get control of it. Okay, sorry, back here.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Lisa Rycroft. I am the Chief of Civilian Training and Leader Development in the Army G3. And my question is, we hear a lot about the hiring issues that we all face, and you're spot on about the system not being exactly what we need or want. But my question is, what is your intent regarding the training and development of Army civilians?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a very important issue. It should be treated no less than how we treat the professional development and education of our NCOs and officers and our enlisted ranks. So it's not something I've been able to focus on yet, but it's something I want to focus on. I've talked a little bit with Will Williams about it. But we need to have, much like we have with the military, kind of clear paths for you and development milestones to reach. And that includes, for me, everything from what we would do in-house in terms of training and education to out-of-house, going to doing civil schooling and things like that. I know several of you gone to the War College. I've talked to some of you. And so I think we need to have a clear path. I need to get on that. And I think, as you heard me say on Monday, now that we have Futures Command, General Murray's there in charge of it now. He's standing it up. It'll still be implementation, but now I can start pivoting more of my focus to talent management. And part and parcel of talent management is professional PME for the military, but PCE, I guess, professional civilian education on that side of the fence. Okay? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir, and again, thank you for coming. We are very pleased to have you here, and it's a great privilege.
No, it's
I'm
my
Alan
privilege.
Tyree from White Sands Missile Range, and
I was out to visit you guys this year.
I'm sorry?
I was out to visit you at Wismar this year.
Yes, you were, and unfortunately, I wasn't there that day, but we'd like to invite you back anytime you'd like.
Are you going to be there this time?
I will make every effort to be there
Okay,
this
you
time.
can just ask me your question then.
Okay, and in part, well, good. It may be a little
just
too
joking with
late
you. Go
by
ahead.
that time, because we've got some IMCOM, the commander of IMCOM. I'm not certain I saw if the commander of Corps of Engineers is still here, but it's a question for all three of you. If I heard correctly, in the opening ceremony, you mentioned that you went through the budget with a fine-tooth comb,
Yep.
and approximately $25 billion was saved, if you will.
Over the FIDEP, yep.
Is there any plans for any of that funding to be directed towards infrastructure for the Big Six? In fact, White Sands will be testing several of the Big Six, but there's infrastructure needed for several of those tests. And we're curious if or I am curious, partly since I will be part of that construction, is any of the funding going to be available for the infrastructure for those projects?
Well, clearly, the reason why we freed up the funding was to put it toward the 6 modernization priorities, which, if you were to dig into it, includes about 20 to 30 programs. So the short answer is yes. I can't recall detail, but I know that we pay very close attention to the testing ranges to make sure that we have the means to do testing. So with Wismar, what's important is hypersonics, as an example, and lasers. And I just talked to the senator from New Mexico, Senator Heinrich, a few days ago about this. So it's something I'm looking at. I want to say I recall yes. I can't recall whether it's exactly Wismar, but I know that we have some deficiencies in our training and test ranges, and that we need to put money into that. And that all fits under the buckets of both readiness and modernization. So I can't tell you for certain. I can't recall the dollar figure. If I could, I'd be on jeopardy. But yeah, I mean, that's clearly the intent.
Well, second to that was the long-range precision fires in particular.
Yeah, that too.
Is really my area of concern at the moment. I know I'll be involved with hypersonics later, but at the moment, long-range precision fires.
Well, hypersonics comes under long-range precision fire, so that's when I speak about it in that context. But yes. Thank you. Okay. Yes, sir.
Sir, my name's Andrew Irwin. I'm a career program manager for Foreign Affairs and strategic planning. Sir, I wondered about talent management. You mentioned that, and you also mentioned the importance of our civilians providing continuity. But one of the problems we've encountered in the career program is the lack of mobility for our civilians. So would you consider some authorities to better move civilians around? Because right now, as a career program manager, everything is contingent upon hiring officials at the pointy end of things, at the receiving commands. So there isn't an authority out there for us. There's no board. There is a senior enterprise talent management program, as you know. But would you consider making a case for authorities, or perhaps looking at the policy to create a mechanism to move our civilians around?
In principle, yes, but I'll tell you what's interesting about your comment is I tend to hear the opposite, that folks want to stay longer in places, and I'm supportive of that too. My philosophical approach is if people are in a job, and if they're performing well, and if the command, the supervisor likes them, then keep them in that job. The flip side of that coin is there is we benefit from moving people around to different locations, different jobs, different experiences to broaden them, and that's how you grow future leaders, right? So you have to strike that balance. I'm surprised I don't have that authority now, but it tends to be commanders, supervisors asking to have the authority to keep folks in one place longer. And case in point is Europe, where folks want to stay a little bit longer in Europe, and yet we send them home following the 5-year rule, which is really the 3-year rule plus 2, but it's the 5-year rule. Anyway, so I'll have to, whoever's covering, well, Diane's here. She's covering for Will Williams since he's back working. And actually, she does all the work, not Will, so I don't know why. I don't know why she's here and he's not. You should be back there and he should be here. But we should bring that back and we'll go from there. Do you have an answer? Yeah, if you can maybe clarify.
Is this about paying for the PCS when? Because I'm not sure.
He just wants to move. I got a slot in Kwajalein, so is that good?
So I will take that, but sir, you do have authorities, and there's a couple of things. It's whether or not somebody wants to move, right? So we've talked about this before. If a civilian's doing well and doesn't want to move, fine. There's also another issue, which I thought he might be alluding to. It's whether or not a command will actually support funding of a PCS to move a civilian, since it is discretionary. And a lot of times, as we have fiscal shortfalls, we don't have funding for PCS if we want to attract talent from across the state or, across the country.
Yeah, so we'll have to dig into that and find out. I think, again, my corporate experience and everything else is, again, if you want to grow talent over the long run, if there's people you want to grow to be the future leaders of your organization, then there is a benefit derived from sending them out and broadening them. And in that case, I would be willing to spend money to move a percentage of people around every year to grow them as the future leaders of the civil service, if you will. My view, but we'll have to follow up on this. Okay? Thank you. Who's next? All the questions? Okay, what I want to do is last thing here before we wrap up here, and that is to make another important announcement here. And we've had a number of great administrative assistants here to the Secretary of the Army over the time, and Mark Averill's been doing a great job filling in. But what I want to do is announce today that our newest admin assistant to the Secretary will be Kathy Miller. And so, Kathy, come on up here. So Kathy's had a distinguished background in the Army. As a civilian, she served as acting director as the Army Budget Office, where she was responsible for over $225 billion. She's served as the Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff, G4, where she supervised Army sustainment activities and helped to modernize the Army logistics system. And most recently, she's serving as the Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff for G357, with a focus on budget and any number of things. This was a tough race, if you will, between the folks I had to choose from. It just speaks to the talent we have resident in the civilian service. I've had the chance to work with Kathy and others involved here, and I've always been impressed by her performance, her demeanor, her commitment, and dedication. So I'm very pleased that she's agreed to step up and fulfill this role, and I think she will serve all of you well and some of the additional duties I'll be giving her. So I want to thank her once again personally for stepping into this role, and I know she'll do a fantastic job. Thank you. Well, thanks, everyone. It was my privilege here to speak to you today. I like doing these town halls to have a discussion with you. I know we're trying to set one up for December or January or something like that. I want to keep on a pace. But thanks for all of your hard work. Thanks for your service. Again, keep sending us good ideas. We've occasionally got some postcards underneath Heather's door. Where's Heather? Right there, occasionally. I like to walk around a lot and talk to you all, and I get a lot of good ideas when I walk around and visit. And it's just good to get out there and find out what's going on. You guys inspire me. You give us good ideas, and it's just good to chat about what we're doing and where we're going. So I want to thank you all again from the bottom of my heart for what you do. Thank you very much, and Army strong.
So I think the renaissance that the Secretary speaks of is already underway, and we've got the right guy at the right time. Folks, don't leave yet. We still have a number of folks to recognize here before we conclude our event. I'd like to invite Mr. Phil Sakowitz, who's the Vice Chairman for Civilian Affairs and AUSA Council of Trustees, to step on stage to help present the awards. Earlier this year, AUSA asked our 123 chapters located within 9 regions to nominate Army civilians whose performance and contributions on the job, in the community, and in support of AUSA were exceptionally meritorious. Our region presidents selected one Army civilian to represent their region to receive AUSA's citation for exceptional service. At Monday's opening ceremony, AUSA awarded the Department of the Army Civilian of the Year Award, the Joseph P. Cribbins Award, to Command Sergeant Major Retired Jesse Sablon. One more time, Jesse, would you stand so we could acknowledge you? We now want to recognize the Regional AUSA Civilian Exceptional Service Award to those who are present. As I call your name, please come forward with your region president. From AUSA 1st Region and Fort Dix Chapter is Captain Retired John Piper. He is accompanied by, I believe, his wife Teresa, 1st Region President, Colonel Retired Dennis Doherty, and Command Sergeant Major Retired Art Maggs Jr., Fort Dix Chapter President. John is presently employed as the Department of the Army Civilian, serving as the Chief of the Training Management Division for the United States Army Support Activity Fort Dix, Director of Plans, Training, Mobilization, and Security. Mr. Piper is assigned the responsibility of oversight, development, and implementation of various training exercises newly stationed at ASA Fort Dix. This includes the development of specific training sites, movement routes, and arranging for mission-critical sustainment items. This effort provided highly technical training opportunities for well over 2,000 soldiers. The AUSA citation for exceptional service is presented to Captain Retired John Piper. From AUSA 3rd Region, Redstone Huntsville Chapters, Dr. William D. Lewis. He's accompanied by his wife Cynthia, 3rd Region President Ms. Chris McBride, and Mr. Steve Messervy, the Chapter Vice President for Civilian Programs, and is also representing Colonel Retired Sam Torrey, the Chapter President. Dr. Lewis leads the Aviation Development Directorate within the Aviation and Missile Research Development Engineering Command, RDECOM, Army Material Command, United States Army. The organization plans and executes the Army Aviation Science and Technology, S&T, program from labs in Huntsville, Alabama, Fort Eustis, Virginia, Moffett Field, California. His leadership, technical knowledge, and deliberate execution resulted in many high-profile accomplishments. The AUSA citation for exceptional service is presented to Dr. William D. Lewis. From AUSA 7th Region in the National Training Center High Desert Chapter, Ms. Renita Wicks-Deason, who also serves as the National Training Center High Desert Chapter President. She's accompanied by Ms. Lori Picard and 7th Region President, Colonel Retired Sam Thiessen. Renita is a public affairs specialist, currently assigned as a community relations chief at Fort Irwin, California. As the community relations specialist, Renita immediately has found ways to reach out to Barstow, Adelanto, Victorville, and many other communities nearby. She's the voice of the Commanding General on visits to various events and socials. She coordinates all CG visits to various flag raising and patriotic and community events. She's a loyal and dedicated Department of the Army civilian, dedicated to strengthening community partnerships on behalf of the Army. AUSA's citation for exceptional service is presented to Ms. Renita Wicks-Deason. From AUSA European Region in the General Creighton W. Abrams Chapter, Ms. Federica Lamauck. She's accompanied by CW3 Retired Anthony Williams, President of the European Region, and Mr. Dave Fulton, Chapter President. Ms. Lamauck has been serving as the Survivor Outreach Services Program Manager for U.S. Army Garrison Wiesbaden, Germany since 2017. In addition to these responsibilities, she's an avid volunteer who selflessly leverages her longtime experience as a military spouse and volunteer to improve the opportunities and services available to soldiers, civilians, and their families residing in the Wiesbaden area. She goes out of her way to ensure Gold Star spouses are included in many community events, and she also ensures Gold Star kids are included in these events. The AUSA citation for exceptional service is presented to Ms. Federica Lamauck. Let's recognize all these civilian award winners one more time, please. The next category of awards is our AUSA Chapter Awards. The first of the 2 award groups is for those chapters having the greatest percentage increase in government civilian employee membership. For chapters with 1,000 or more members, the winner is the North Texas Audie Murphy Chapter. Runner-up, George Washington Chapter, Accepting for the North Texas Audie Murphy chapter is J.P. Hogan. For chapters with, yep, another round of applause is good. For chapters with 600 to 999 members, the winner is the Monmouth chapter. Runner-up is the Indiana chapter. Accepting for the Monmouth chapter is Mr. Charles Seal. For those with 350 to 599 members, the winner is the Capital District of New York chapter. Runner-up, Columbia River chapter. Accepting for the Capital District of New York chapter is Command Sergeant Major retired John Wilsey. For those with 200 to 349 members, the winner is the Kuwait chapter. Runner-up, Mid-Palatinate and Tri-State chapters. Accepting for the Kuwait chapter is the chapter president, Dr. Rania Azmi. For those with less than 200 members, the winner is the National Training Center High Desert Chapter. We don't have a runner-up for this category. Accepting for the National Training Center High Desert Chapter is the chapter president, Ms. Renita Wicks-Deason. Oh. Okay, Lori is accepting on behalf of the chapter. Lori, come on up. And the final award of the afternoon is in the category of greatest government civilian employee membership. For chapters having 1,000 or more members, the winner is my own chapter, the Redstone-Huntsville chapter. Runner-up, George Washington chapter. Accepting for the Redstone-Huntsville chapter is Dr. Stephen Meservey. For those with 600 to 999 members, the winner is the Major General Harry Green, Aberdeen chapter. Runner-up is the Monmouth chapter. Accepting is chapter president Jim Costigan. For those with 350 to 599 members, the winner is the Tobyhanna Army Depot chapter. Runner-up, Rock Island Arsenal chapter. Accepting is the chapter president, Sergeant Major retired Calvin Spencer. For those with 200 to 349 members, the winner is the Picatinny Arsenal Middle Forge chapter. Runner-up, Robert E. Lee chapter. Accepting is the chapter president, Mr. Steve Flatt, along with Mr. Jeff Meek. And the final recipient, for those with less than 200 members as a goal, is the winner. The winner is the National Training Center High Desert chapter. Accepting is Lori, right? Lori. So congratulations to all the chapters who received a streamer today, and a special thank you for reaching out and connecting with Army civilians wherever you are. For those of you who received an individual war plaque after we close, I think we've got a box at the stage to place your award in. If not, I guess you have to carry it yourself, but we'll see. In closing, I just want to say that AUSA is very, very proud of all of its the Army civilians that it supports and what you do and what you mean for our Army. And one final plug, if you aren't already a member of AUSA, please join us. We need you. This concludes our luncheon and our program. Thanks to everybody for being here and attending. Thank you, John. All right. Hey, cool.